Welcome back. We are now on turn 15, so we are going to be looking at the game from the Entente perspective at the very end of 1914. So here you'll see the Serbian front. The Central Powers have begun a joint Austrian-German effort to take down the Serbs. That's going to probably be too much for the Serbs to hold off for much longer. The Austrians are trying to make sure that they keep their passes clear through the Carpathians here. You see German artillery coming up on the Serbian front. That's probably going to spell doom for Serbs. This is Krakow, which is not likely to stand for a whole lot longer. Looking at the amount of Russian forces, as you can see, the Russians can bring a lot of troops in. They really put some serious pressure on the Austrians. Austrians trying to inflict some damage against the Russians where they can. Hopefully that doesn't turn out to be a mistake. We're inflicting heavy losses on the Russians, but we're also taking a lot in the process. This is East Prussia. The Germans are finally starting to move against the Russian forces here. The Germans have a whole lot of higher readiness than the Russian forces in this sector. As you can see, they're just inflicting major losses on the Russians. Hopefully for the Germans, this will end up being a kind of a turning point. Hindenburg is in charge of that army, and he has an excellent 9 rating, which gives a huge readiness bonus to all his troops. This is the Belgian front. The Germans are just kind of organizing their line. You can see there's a nice little salient here that Germany has created. That might pose some opportunities for the Entente here in the West. It's pretty formidable for a 1915 defense. In 1916, this defense wouldn't hold for very long, but for right now, it probably will be sufficient to at least maintain the line. You can see the British have basically got close to an army on shore now, which isn't much, but it does help relieve the French duty some in the northwest. This is the Ottoman Mid-Eastern front. The Ottomans are starting to bring in some troops to try and stall the British. The Caucasian front. And we have a sub that was trying to sneak by, but managed to get picked up by a destroyer. Here you see some Austrian garrisons being formed. The Italians have started claiming parts of Austria, and so the Austrians get some free garrisons that help to delay Italian entry, but it's probably just a matter of time at this point before the Italians come in. You can see that Italy has been encouraged by Russian successes. This would be the fall of Limburg. Some volunteers from the USA join Serbia's fight. That'll help the Serbs a little, give them a good garrison or detachment unit. See, the British get a whole bunch of extra cruisers. They also get the Hague HQ. I'm actually planning to not send Hague to Europe in this game. I'm going to send him and several corps to the Mideast and see if we can knock the Ottomans out. Maybe take Jerusalem a little early. The Russians get a battleship here. So speaking of the Allied operations for 1915, the general flow of operations is going to be, take a look at this salient. We have some opportunities, particularly here at Arras, where we can, as you can see, we can surround that unit and put some heavy-duty firepower on them. However, it's probably going to be tough to really crack far into this line. If we look at our technology, I have invested a good bit in heavy artillery for Great Britain. I'll also be doing that shortly for France. Neither side can do a whole lot with their artillery units until they've gotten at least level 1 tech researched. And even then, we still have to build it, which is going to be difficult to do throughout 1915. So 1916 will probably be the earliest that we're really going to have any major artillery that we can focus on this front. So any offenses that we run will be limited in scope. However, Arras here looks like a good option. Further down on the line, this sector looks a little weak. Mulhausen in particular looks tempting, as it's a national morale objective for France. It gives us a nice little boost if we can take it. This Verdun sector looks a little exposed. I wouldn't mind maybe making a quick dash here, possibly using my artillery to weaken these units and push up. In general, all across this line, right now we have this little bit of a no man's land. The reason for that being that if I move a troop up, he'll get a whole bunch of ready attacks on me. At some point, we'll probably use artillery to cover that approach and move up. Just really getting in preparation for the 1916 offensives. Down here on the Mid-Eastern front, I basically am going to end up with about one army's worth of forces here under Hamilton. Hamilton is going to attempt to really establish a line, and then I'll be bringing Haig in with an additional 3 or 4 corps units, and we'll see if we can make a breach there. I'm not going to bother with Gallipoli. If the Central Powers player is smart and leaves Gallipoli defended, that's a pretty major undertaking. And we'll probably end up like it was historically. Here in the Caucasus Mountains, we'll see just basically a defensive effort by Russia. They don't have enough corps to do much. In Russian Poland, we've got a very nice defense going here. We've got some options to potentially bring some troops up here from the Western Galicia effort. We're going to try and hold Warsaw for as long as possible. We'll see if it'll hold, though. My other objective is primarily with Brusilov, who you can see when I select. I see his army highlighted. He's going to gradually move over here and see if maybe he can push down into the Carpathian Pass at this point. Possibly push in. If we make it through, Budapest is just a little stone's throw. So I think it's worth the effort. The Austrians probably can hold that pass if they really make the effort, but we're going to give it a shot just to see, and if nothing else, it'll at least put pressure on a key sector. Elsewhere in Galicia, the Austrians seem to be holding pretty steadily, so I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of other options. I might have been able to push in here, take Kolomea, and try and push in through this pass. The problem with doing that is with one unit all along this mountain line, the Austrians can easily defend it. So it's hard once we get past that initial position to put much pressure to bear. So I've opted not to try for that. In my experience, that tends to get bottlenecked and stalemated very quickly. Gonna have to kind of keep an eye on the Eastern Prussian front with the Russians. We took a real serious beating in the last 2 turns, especially this last turn with the Second Corps being knocked down to 2 strength, and my reserve corps here is down to 6. So I've essentially only got 3 corps left. And if you notice, my attacks against his positions are not coming out with very good odds. So we may gradually start falling back. Kovno and Vilna we want to keep as long as possible. We also have to kind of keep an eye on Riga up here, make sure that doesn't come under too big a threat. Minsk is kind of my no retreat zone. If you look at the map setup, if we scroll out a little, it's a little easier to see. Ultimately, if we have to, we have the Pripyat marshes here, which are basically impassable terrain. So we may ultimately, once the Germans push us back, it's hard to see with it being winter, but this is a river line. We may ultimately kind of have to hold Riga to the Vinsk, and then the Minsk sector down to around here. We can hold that with basically one force here, one force here, one force here. We can keep the Germans contained, at the very least. And then down here, we may end up having to ultimately pull back into this sector. While Romania is still neutral, this is a very small front to defend, so we could do this with really one big oversized force. So that's kind of my ultimate end lines. The Centrals are most likely going to come in pushing hard in 1915, so I'm kind of looking forward to where we'll eventually fall back to. But that kind of gives you a general idea of what we're looking at. Italy will be coming into the war soon. With Italy, it's always best, I find, to try and push eastward as quickly as possible, as hard as possible. If you can break through the mountain passes, you've got a lot of options, but that's very difficult to do. You'll notice that there's basically one main rail line that runs through here to Trieste up to Salzburg, and as long as the Austrians keep that line intact, they can pretty much hold the initiative on defense. So anyway, a lot of action coming in 1915. We'll see how it pans out. Thank you for listening to my session, and I hope to see you next time.